Now let's get the latest from Victoria Derbyshire, who's in Whitehall for us this morning. Victoria.
Hello, yes, welcome to London. It is drizzling. We are live at the Foreign Office this morning because it is day 20 of Richard Ratcliffe's hunger strike. He's on a hunger strike to protest at his wife's continued detention in Iran. Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe was arrested at Tehran airport with her little girl, who was just 1 3/4 at the time, and accused by the Iranians of spying, something that she totally denies. She was given a 5-year sentence. That actually ended earlier this year. Literally within a week, the Iranians had charged and sentenced her again to another year in jail. Right now, Mrs. Zaghari-Ratcliffe is allowed to live at her mum and dad's house in Tehran, essentially under house arrest. But she could be sent back to jail at any moment because she lost her appeal against that 1-year sentence last month. We are going to spend some time with Mr. Ratcliffe this morning. Before we hear from him, we are going to show you some of the messages and some of the banners that are here. There's a visitor's book as well. But look at these. Prime Minister, what happened to the government's moral compass? What happened to your leadership? How long will this continue? Hashtag free Nazanin. Just let me get on this side. Don't forget, we're just a family standing in front of a Prime Minister asking him to keep his word. Hashtag free Nazanin. You may want to send a message to Mr. Ratcliffe and indeed his wife this morning. Please do. On Twitter, I'm at Vic Derbyshire, and many of you have already done that. I'm going to read some of them to Mr. Ratcliffe a little later. Before we hear from him, let me show you where he's been living for the last 19 nights, 20 days. This is his tent. He's been sleeping here every night. Alongside him, a couple more tents where family members or supporters sleep to keep him company, to look after him, obviously, and for a little bit of security. You might see this poster here, Free Anusha. Anusha Ashuri is another dual British-Iranian national. He's in jail. He's 67. He's been retired 2 years. He's in jail in Tehran, the jail that Nazanin was in, accused of spying too. He completely denies that. We're going to talk to his daughter later. I just want to show you, and bear with me because of the drizzle, the picture might cut up, but I just want to show you how close we are to the Foreign Office. It's right here, 25 steps away. So everybody who works at the Foreign Office walks up this pavement and they will see Mr. Ratcliffe sitting there calmly and in a composed manner. And on day 5 of Mr. Ratcliffe's hunger strike, he was called in here to have a meeting with the latest Foreign Secretary. He left that meeting saying that he felt deflated. On day 19, he was called in to have a meeting with a Foreign Office minister. He left that meeting saying he felt depressed. There have been 5 Foreign Secretaries since Mrs. Zaghari-Ratcliffe was detained. One of those is now the Prime Minister. He lives just through there. It's literally a 2-minute walk from here down to Whitehall, left and left again. There has been no communication from Boris Johnson with Mr. Ratcliffe in the time that Mr. Ratcliffe has been living here. I have a statement from the Foreign Office. Obviously, we asked the Foreign Secretary and Foreign Office Minister for an interview. They declined. They gave us this statement. The Foreign Office engages with the families of British detainees in Iran on a regular basis. Support is available to them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Since his hunger strike started, Richard Ratcliffe has met the Foreign Secretary, Minister Cleverly, and senior officials. The Foreign Secretary continues to work to secure the release of British nationals unfairly detained in Iran. She spoke to her Iranian counterpart on Monday, the 8th of November, raising the cases of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe, Morad Tabaz, and Anusha Ashuri. So let's talk to Mr. Ratcliffe now. Hello, thank you very much for spending some time with us this morning.
Thank you, Victoria.
How are you feeling physically?
Yeah, I'm okay. Definitely getting weaker as the days go on. Definitely wearier. Going to bed earlier, getting up later. Feel quite creaky in my body and quite cranky, if that makes sense. Yeah, it feels like this is a middle-aged man camping on the streets. It's getting quite hard going.
What is not eating for pretty much 3 weeks now doing to your body?
Well, obviously I'm losing a lot of weight and look a lot thinner. Definitely slowed down a lot. So things like feeling the cold more, particularly fingers and toes. So I've got gloves on and very thick socks and so on. And yeah, obviously at some point the body works through all the reserves it has, and then it starts to make choices about which bits it protects. Probably doing a hunger strike in the winter is a less sensible idea than doing one in the summer.
I've been reading about hunger strikers, and as far as I can tell, you are now in the danger zone. I think after day 12, day 15, that things are getting serious.
Yeah, I think no hunger strike's healthy. The longer it goes on, the less healthy it gets, and that's right. That certainly beyond 15 days, it gets a bit wobbly. And I've got a family doctor who's now checking me quite carefully for things like blood pressure and pulse and responses and dizziness and so on. All the signs that it's gone too far. So far, he's happy enough for it to continue, but there's definitely a lot of concern in the family.
And we are going to talk to your mum actually, and the family doctor, who is your brother-in-law, Lim, in a few minutes' time. Do you mind me asking how your mental health is?
So in my head it feels fine. I think perhaps I'm slurring a little on words sometimes. That's a warning sign. But yeah, I feel reasonably upbeat. We've had lots of lovely people have come along and shared their care and concern. And it feels like we're making a clear statement to the government, which is being heard. The danger with a hunger strike is just like your body sort of withdraws in, also your mind does. So you end up getting more and more stubborn and less able to judge your own actions, where you are. And that's why it's actually important to have someone who can intervene on the outside.
Yes. When I was here earlier in the week, you talked to me about getting to that stubborn point. What does that mean in practical terms for you?
So it means two. One is I find I'm not very good at diverting from what I want to do, thank you very much, and also can get wrapped up in sort of details rather than bigger things, and learning to not get cross about small things, and I have to discipline myself more than I would have done normally.
You mentioned a moment or two ago the potential of slurring your words or slowing down. It seems extraordinary to me that you are so coherent, so eloquent after 3 weeks without food.
Yeah, I think it's diminishing. Certainly I find if I get asked a tricky question, you may see that this morning, I struggle a bit more. But yeah, I think so far it's holding up. And I remember I did a previous hunger strike in front of the Iranian embassy. I was really struggling with interviews. It's also the later in the day. I'm all right in the mornings, and the later the day goes on, the more obvious the effects of the hunger strike are.
Do you think you have some personal characteristics that also help you survive this and survive the trauma of the separation from Nazanin?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm evidently quite stubborn, so that's come through. And I, probably try and live life one day at a time. Those who follow our story on your show and others will have seen there have been lots of ups and downs, lots of moments where we thought things were going to break through, and lots of moments where things felt terrible. I've tried not to live those too keenly, so often my job is to go on the airwaves and say this is what's happened and push the government to do better. And then afterwards it's sort of a bit like a delayed emotional reaction and felt where we are. That's a coping strategy. In some ways that helps. Maybe in some ways that stores up trouble for later on. We'll see when we start the counselling after this is all over.
How is your 7-year-old Gabriella? Because she was here at half term, but how is she now potentially seeing you on the TV news like this?
Yes, so that's right. She's at school at the moment,
yeah.
So hopefully she's not watching telly. But yeah, I think we were very worried at the beginning as to how traumatic this was going to be. She came down quite a lot during the half-term week, and that was definitely disconcerted, having nightmares and sleepless nights the first couple of nights I was away. Being down here, and we had some of her classmates came down and we decorated the camp, that became sort of familiar enough that then she was more comfortable. But yeah, also now, of course, it's a bit like visiting a sick relative in hospital. You sort of see someone that you expect to see in a certain way, and it's upsetting as a child when they're less capable. So I think we have to be careful about how far we take it and how upsetting it is for her.
She's grown up with this, of course. I mean, I mentioned in the introduction, she was nearly 2 when her mum, your wife, was arrested at that airport in Tehran. How does she cope with it?
That's a good question, and I think that's right. In some ways, when you're one of 3 quarters, you can't explain.
No.
Clearly very traumatised at the beginning, would cry every night for where her mum was, would go to the picture on the mantelpiece of my in-laws' house and point to the wedding photo of Mummy and Dad, saying, I want to see Mummy, and we'll go to the door saying, let's go to see Daddy. And at some point, she adjusted to the reality of she was being brought up by her grandparents for a bit. Mm-hmm. That became her life. Got to see Nazanin in prison periodically. I mean, in prison, where she'd be taken into, solitary confinement, and the parents were hoods over their heads to go there.
Gosh. She
was so small, of course, she didn't understand that. And the interrogators would insist on taking Gabriella and playing with her first before they let her mum do it. Actually, at some point, she picked up emotionally. She shouldn't play with them. She should just play with Mummy and Daddy. But at the beginning, she was just a little baby, so absorbed it. Over the years, clearly, when she came back, and she came back when she was past 5, that was a real shock for her. She could speak Farsi fluently. She'd lost her English, quite disrupted. Came back for school, really threw herself into school and learning English and being English in that way that often, migrant children do, where they almost don't want to speak their formal language outside or anywhere near school and want to show that they're very English. And I think now she's sort of feeling settled into being in West Hampstead, which is where we live, part of a community and feeling normal. But she's definitely desperate to be normal rather than to be, this sort of odd person. But she will ask, when's Mummy coming home and when can Mummy pick me up from the school gates?
How do you answer that?
Well, when Mummy's coming home, I don't know. Certainly when we got to the end of Nazanin's sentence, which, as you were saying earlier, was in March, we were counting down and almost like an advent calendar, crossing off the days. That was very hard for her when we got to the end, and Mummy didn't come. And I didn't have an answer for her. And obviously that sort of disorientation that, it didn't happen. Christmas didn't come, effectively. Now I think she takes all promises about Mummy coming home with a bit of a pinch of salt. She knows that we keep battling. She knows that she's part of that battle. But at the same time, life goes on. And the conversation I've been having with her now is, well, when's hunger strike going to finish, and when's camping going to finish? She talks about it, and when can we go swimming? It's the sort of the good things that will happen afterwards. And when you're 7, you live in the moment a bit more.
This photograph of Nazanin, the one that we all know so well, with that incredible smile and the red earrings and the sunglasses on her head, when was that taken? What was going on there?
So that was taken probably a few months before she was taken. She was on holiday. She still smiles like that. Still can.
But so many of us watching will know that photo, but we don't know her. What is your wife like?
Yeah, well, lovely. Kind, caring, strong moral core, so a strong sense of outrage. Used to, pull her husband up plenty of times when she felt he was falling short. Lovely. We met when she came over to study here back in 2007. Met through a mutual friend that was speaking at a conference. We both went there and were stuck in the audience and went for a coffee and then another coffee and another coffee. And it just felt like one of those moments of coming home, where you just really connect with someone, just really unexpectedly at ease. There were cultural differences. As it turns out, we came from very different political places. So I don't think any of us had any idea this is where we'd end up. Really lucky to have found her.
Let me ask you about the meeting that you had yesterday with Foreign Office Minister James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary's deputy, essentially. How did you feel about that meeting? What happened?
Yeah, I got quite cross in it. On hunger strike, you get cross more easily. I felt we got told nothing.
You felt what, sorry?
I felt we got told nothing. So a good half of the meeting was taken up saying, listen, we've raised Nazanin's case and we're raising it very strongly, which, well, of course you are, and that it was a cordial meeting and we have a good relationship with Iran. And there was no substance on what are they doing about the debt. There was no substance on, well, can you assure us that, Nazanin's not being connected to wider things around the nuclear deal. There was no substance on really what the Iranians have responded, apart from that they'd insisted that, their judiciary was independent. So I mean, it felt like a bit of a placebo, if I'm honest. Like, we'd had this meeting, I couldn't even get the minister to really understand that their strategy's not working. And here we are, 5.5 years into a 5-year sentence. Like, it's remarkably ineffective. And they were still saying, well, we consider everything you proposed to us. We don't think it's the right time to do anything more. We're going to carry on doing what we're doing. There are negotiations going on which we can't tell you about. And I just said to them, listen, I don't see anything other than the same status quo. I think the reason why we came right when we did, bad time in autumn, but the reason why we started camping was because I was convinced they were about to throw Nazanin back in prison. I think, and I said to them, I think by us being here, we've bought a bit of time. But I don't see anything to stop them playing games, and continue to play games, and throw Nazanin back, in after Christmas. I don't see in all these games of carrot and stick, there's any stick from the government. Essentially, you're just allowing them to take people hostage and abuse them. And that, effectively appeasement, is why they get away with it.
You said you got cross in the meeting. You always come across as so calm and so composed. You are angry now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm outraged. The fact that, the fact that it's been allowed to last for 5.5 years. The fact, let's be honest, Nazanin was taken hostage over a government debt. The government knew that before we did. And actually the government's first response was to downplay it and deflect it, and for the longest time wouldn't actually acknowledge Nazanin was innocent, wouldn't actually do anything other than hide behind the Iranian legal system and say they were just following due process. Well, there is no due process in Iran. And even now, all the parliamentary statements still talk about the fact is, well, the problem is they're dual nationals, as though there's some sort of second-tier citizenship in this country. And all along, it's been about their debt.
This is the £400 million that the UK owes Iran, a debt from the 70s. The reason that the UK owes Iran that money is because Iran ordered a load of tanks, paid for them, and the UK failed to deliver them. When you ask any of the foreign secretaries that we've had, or the Foreign Office Minister yesterday, why don't you pay them the £400 million? That is their money, that we owe them. What do they say to you?
They won't say. So we asked again yesterday to Minister Cleverly, and he said, well, there's obviously, he started saying it was a legal problem, then realised there isn't one, so backed away from that. And they said, well, our position is well known. And I said, well, with respect, your position is not well known at all. We don't know it. You've never told it to us. I don't know anyone that you have told it to. I don't know. There's clearly some reason, because it's been lasting this length of time. It's got to the point where Iran is taking hostages to get their money back. They went to court, they negotiated, various things happened before we got here. And yeah, it is an extraordinary thing that the government will not explain why they are allowing people to be in harm's way.
Well, what do you think about that they won't tell you?
It's the accountability gap, the lack of explanation for government decisions that have an impact on ordinary people's lives, and that you can just get away with it. You can just say, we don't want to talk about it, and then what can I do about it? It's extraordinary.
I rang one of the former foreign secretaries who's been in the post while your wife has been detained. They told me that they think the UK has decided they want to pay that debt. But this former foreign secretary said they think it needs a massive push from the Prime Minister now to make it happen. In other words, the Prime Minister has to grip this, focus on it, and decide to sort it once and for all. Do you agree?
No, I think that's right. I think obviously the Prime Minister is in charge of all of us and all government decisions. He's also personally promised to pay that debt back when he was Foreign Secretary, and now he's Prime Minister. He's got the power. I haven't met him for a while, but I met him back in 2020, and he was clear that they would do everything they could to get Nazanin home. Back in the day, he said, I'll leave no stone unturned. That's why in front of us there are all these stones painted. It's to remind him, to remind the government that they've got a promise unkept. So I gave Liz Truss, when we first met her a couple of weeks back, one of those stones to say, you inherit this promise, so, hold on to it. I did expect more from the Prime Minister. I thought he would have kept his word by now.
Do you still have confidence in this government to help secure the release of Nazanin?
No, I said to them bluntly behind closed doors, I wouldn't be camping here if I had confidence. This is as clear a statement as I know how to make, to say that the current path is not working. I do fear that Nazanin will be put back in prison. I do fear others will be taken. And it seems to me irresponsible, if not just reckless, to be playing with innocent people's lives in this way.
We are going to talk to your mum and your brother-in-law, as I said, a little later, actually, just because of the timings of things. Is it hard sometimes to keep being so diplomatic?
Well, I'm not sure I feel particularly diplomatic at this point. There are times when I have been. I'm not sure a hunger strike is a particularly soft tactic. I find our situation is hard because we're clearly wrapped up in stuff we don't know about and don't understand, and it's a different world. And I can think, like, when we were in the middle of the maelstrom of the Prime Minister, when he was Foreign Secretary, making his gaffe, and suddenly we went from being a fairly low-level story to being on the front pages and all the media around, and people briefing against us, and feeling completely out of our depth. We are still out of our depth. I've learned more as I've gone along. I've learned more about international politics, more about the way diplomats work and think. But we're still an ordinary family, bumbling our way through it. It's been a tough old process.
What are the things you think about doing together with your wife and your daughter in the future?
Well, Gabriella's got a long list of things she wants to do that tend to involve going to toy shops and Legoland and other exciting things.
What do you want to do when you're reunited?
For me, it's probably being normal again. So it's actually, in some ways, it's almost like you kind of want life to pick up where it left off, and to be going around the neighbourhood and going to coffee shops and walking in the park, and of course, Gabriella's not 1 3/4 and will sit in a pram in the way that she would have done, but that kind of just being a normal family in our neighbourhood, no longer on the telly, no longer all that stuff, and just healing again. In fairness, I've had an awful lot of kindness these past 3 weeks, but actually these past 5.5 years, which Nazi's been less exposed to. So it has been a reminder that actually the world's a kind place, and to sort of share that in a normal, ordinary way is, I think what the happy ever after is for us.
Could today be the last day of this hunger strike?
I don't know. I think we'll go a bit longer. We're definitely near the end. You'll speak to Lim, my brother-in-law. He's certainly of the view that we're near the end.
How long can you do it for, do you think?
Well, the problem is I'm not a good judge at some point.
Okay, fair enough.
So I can always do it one day more.
Yeah. We're going to bring in Lim and your mum in a moment. I'm just going to read you some messages, if I may, from people around the country who are watching you. And I asked them, what is your message to Richard and Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe? Carly says, my message is he has the support of the public and to let us know what we can do to reach the government on his behalf. I've written to my MP, but I want to do more. Nicholas says, I hope he knows how much love and support there is for him and his family, and how people in this country are appalled at the treatment he and Nazanin and Gabriella have received from a government that is supposed to represent them. Stay strong, Richard. We support you. Nick says, please tell Mr. Ratcliffe that we are moved beyond belief by his incredible dedication and love for his wife. And we are both shocked and angered by this government's refusal to do the decent thing to pay off the debt to Iran so he can bring her home to her family. And I'm just going to show our audience, how do you respond to those?
They're lovely, aren't they? It's just such a lovely outpouring of care. I'm honoured from all the messages we've received. It is, it uplifts me, it uplifts Nazanin. I'm really grateful for everyone, for all their care they've given us.
I'm just going to go over to your visitors book, if it's all right with you, and read a couple of the messages because everybody who comes here, people drop by, complete strangers, politicians, high-profile people drop by, and they are asked to write in this visitors book. So I'm just going to read you a couple of messages because there are so many. Bear with me, I just need to put my specs on, which are covered in drizzle. Dear Richard and family, I want you to know that so many people are with you in your desperate situation. Hopefully, we can all apply pressure to our government. We're just going to bring in Barbara and Lim round there, actually, on some chairs in a sec. Hopefully we can all apply pressure to our government, thinking of you and Dave and Tom. Richard, your plight... Can't read this writing. Your plight overwhelms us with feelings of injustice and heartbreak, with admiration to you both. Dear Richard and Nazanin, looking at your strength and sending you love. And there are so many of these. I think we've got some chairs, have we, for Lim? Oh no, we'll do it standing up, shall we? Yeah. Actually, no, let's have chairs. Come on, Barbara. Come and sit down. Come and sit down next to your son. Let's bring these chairs round. Let's do it. Sorry about this, everybody. There you go. I've just broken your chair. Come and sit down, Barbara.
Lovely.
Come and sit down.
You enter.
Is it safe? Bring it round here, Lim. Yeah. Perfect. Bring it there. Lim, you are the doctor here. You are Richard's brother-in-law.
Yeah.
How do you are the one that's monitoring him. How do you think he's doing?
So, to be honest, I can't believe how well he appears to be doing. To the best of my ability, under these fairly primitive circumstances, he's doing as well as I could reasonably expect. I'm sure he's told you and has told many people before that he is slowing down. He does get much quieter, as we've experienced with this previously. And, you know, some days are better than others, but physically he seems to be in as good shape as we could expect. His temperature's not dropping dangerously. He's as you can tell, lucid, and isn't complaining of any symptoms that would cause us undue concern at this time. And it's kind of amazing because, to be honest, when we heard that he was going to go on hunger strike again, I think, I was very concerned. Different circumstances. Obviously, we're much further on now.
Yeah.
The longer we get, the more go, the more dangerous it gets. And we're in the middle of a British winter. It's colder. It's wetter. Putting his body under immense strain. His batteries do run out after all of the interviews and all of the well-wishes over a long day.
And that's why we're so grateful that you're spending so much time with us. Barbara, mums always want to fix things for their kids.
That's right. You do.
But do you want Richard to stop this hunger strike now?
I would love him to stop right now, before he does damage to himself. But I know he will carry on until he thinks it's the right time. So as long as we've got a doctor with him, and if we haven't, then I should just, if I think he's ill, that'll be it.
Yeah.
I should do 999 and get him there, or a cab, to a hospital.
What do you think, as his mum, of what he is doing to try to get the UK government to change its strategy to get his wife home?
Well, we're absolutely so proud of him. Can't believe really we've produced a child like that, a man like that. What else can he do? I think, we're all at desperate points. And this is just to show that he really does care, and we do mean to get her back. And Gabriella knows that she has got a mummy and a daddy. Yeah.
Lim, this really is a family affair. You're here, as we said, monitoring. You are a microbiologist, you're a doctor. From your expertise, what is happening to somebody's body when they haven't eaten for 20 days?
Yeah, so he'll have already gone through the point where his body is essentially starting to consume itself in order to stay alive. We'll have had a phase of consuming muscle. That doesn't go on forever. He'll now be eating into his body's fat stores. You can get very dangerous changes in electrolytes if certain vitamins drop too low. That can cause fairly significant psychological problems and even brain damage. We're doing our best to make sure that with no food, no energy intake at all, that it's made as safe as it can possibly be. So making sure that his body's getting enough salt, making sure that we replace some of the vitamins that can lead to permanent damage if you, when the levels of those get very low when somebody's starving themselves. But it's an extreme thing to go through, and it's difficult to watch.
Barbara, you clearly got such a strong and supportive family, but I wonder what impact this has on you as the family, watching Richard do this.
Well, doing the hunger strike,
Yeah.
I think we're just all so worried. Yes. But you're not daft, are you? You know you've got a little girl and a wife.
But when you hear, Richard, when you hear your mum say that she wants you to stop now, what do you, and there are also some messages from people who are really worried about you and would like you to stop. What do you say?
I think that's right. It does put a strain on everyone. A hunger strike is not a light thing, and it's a thing that generates. And it's important that I keep responsible. And the danger is that you get wrapped up in, one more day, as I was saying, to make your point, one more day to see what. We'll do it for a bit, and then we'll let go. This is not the hill to die on.
How many days does one have to do a hunger strike for a Prime Minister to go, OK, we need to sort this?
Exactly. I would have thought we were there anyway. If I were Prime Minister, I wouldn't be wanting to be responsible for somebody starving themselves. When, as far as I can see, he could just pay the money, and then maybe she'll come back. And if it had been paid to begin with, she would have been home 5 years ago.
And then what do you say?
Yeah, I say our Prime Minister made promises which haven't been kept. From my perspective, I don't want to see a member of my family hunger striking for any time at all. To be on day 20 of this, it's a very extreme and desperate action. He should be able to see what a desperate situation this family feels it's in. This hasn't been done lightly. And I think Ricky has always accepted that, there may come a point where, we had to step in and stop this because it was dangerous. The longer that we go on, the more likely that becomes. I think all of us hope that it ends soon.
I have no idea if the Prime Minister is watching. Richard, if he is, what would you say to him?
Yeah, it's probably just keep your promises. He promised in 2017 to sort this. He promised the Iranians he'd pay the debt. Here we are 4 years later and he hasn't. And we've had 4 more years of suffering. So now he is the big boss, able to do whatever he wants. His job is to protect British citizens. Here's one that needs it.
Thank you very much, Richard and Lim and Barbara. Thank you very much for talking to our audience. There are so many messages. I will make sure you get them all. Just to say, go on, Barbara.
Can we thank all the supporters who have been so lovely? Because that is what's helping us keep going, isn't it? That is. They are.
Yeah. They give you strength.
We are so grateful to them.
Thank you. Just to say that after 10 o'clock we are going to talk to the daughter of someone else who is in jail in Tehran. He's a retired engineer, British national, Anusha Shuri, sentenced to 10 years in jail for allegedly spying, which he denies. We're going to talk to his daughter and also find out more about the many issues involved with those detained. Richard mentioned some of them, the debt, sanctions, the nuclear deal and so on. So do stay with us if you can.
Thanks, Victoria.
Thank you.